on the Pan-African Solidarity Education Network, known as PASEN. This started at the first Scramble for Africa conference, which was held in Pretoria, South Africa, from the 25th to the 27th of May in 2011. The numerous challenges facing the African continent and contributing to its profound underdevelopment were identified and discussed. A wide-ranging diversity of speakers at the event specifically challenged the African intelligentsia, including that in the diaspora, in the diaspora community in general, and the African governments in particular, to invest efforts in actions that would produce visible results towards addressing the constraints identified at the conference. At that particular symposium, we had Dr. Russell Khwala delivering, a paper on the challenges that are faced by, government and also young people in terms of subjects like science, education, engineering, technology, and everybody felt that we needed to do something. Let's just stop the talk shops and do something that is specific and that is going to transform the entire education system. So a key challenge to the development of the African continent and that of Africans in the diaspora is that of poor educational outcomes, particularly in the core subjects of mathematics, science, and technology. We've just heard from Professor Mamwenda telling us the triumphs and prosperity of education in Africa, looking at the university level. And he indicated that we can't be as a university when you've not passed through the proper channels. You can't just wake up and be a university student. You must go through your primary education, you must go through your secondary education, and whatever happens there determines your future. Your future is not determined, by you just being at the university. Because if the background was not right, you cannot go through university successfully. And these are the issues that are going to come up as we discuss today. There are a number of factors which contribute to this, and some of them are dysfunctional education management systems, inadequate investment in education by African governments, poor infrastructure in schools, lack of libraries, science labs, ICT equipment. If you read, some months ago, a few weeks ago, the results that came out from Tanzania for higher education, what we call here matric, or in Tanzania they may be using at O-level and A-level, advanced level. The results were so poor that the minister they had to come up and say, this is not acceptable. And one of the areas it identified were poor infrastructure. The same thing in South Africa. The results of our matric students passing from higher education to tertiary education are extremely poor. It's not something we can be proud of as a nation. I don't care who says what, whether they say the pass rate was higher this year than last year. What was it based on? These are the issues that are very important. Lack of qualified and committed teaching workforce, low teacher morale and poor professional development, and a highly Eurocentric curriculum which is alienating and demotivating black learners both on the continent and in the diaspora countries. Another major challenge identified is the problem of youth high unemployment in Africa and the diaspora. And of course, lack of vocational guidance for these students in school also contributes to the poor results and the fact that some of them have passed, but they can't go to university because they've missed all sorts of subjects, religious knowledge, and this one, and then you find out at the end, you can't even choose the proper subject, the career that the child wants to proceed on. These are some of the issues. So a number of participants at the symposium responded to the call of action, and they have developed the concept of a Pan-African Solidarity Education Network known as PASEN. initiative as a means to address the key challenge of educational advancement for African youth in Africa and in the diaspora. We have a panel with us that will give more information on PASEN, and I will start with our brother here, Oscar Braithwaite. I'll give him only 15 minutes, then I'll give Dr. Rasifala 10 minutes, and then we will have a discussion. No, I'm not biased.
Yeah.
I'm an engineer, so I'm very disciplined.
Yeah.
Yes. She's not like some of our professors who speak forever and ever and forget that there's something called time. No, that's why we agreed, okay, she will take only 10 minutes, and then we will open the discussion for us 20 minutes. At least let's discuss and have a way forward to this person topic. Thank you very much. Oscar? Yeah, on the
First of all, let me say good morning to each and every one of you. Fortunately, unfortunately, I've been restricted to time limit. As educators, sometimes we tend to go on and on. So therefore, what I've done is to write out a script so that I keep in line and at the same time bring the necessary elements that I want to get through. But as a preamble, it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be given the opportunity to present and share my thoughts and ideas among these distinguished scholars, educators, and Pan-Africans. I would like to take this opportunity to bring you greetings from the thousands of African Canadians who wish you success in this endeavor, because your success has a bearing on their success. And even though there are great geographical divide between us, away over there and you over here, African Canadians know that the geographical divide does not diminish the historical and cultural and spiritual connectedness that should and always will bind us together. That connectedness will ensure that we keep moving forward on all fronts until we are liberated, until we are united, until we are free from all oppression. We will continue to support each other. My task today is to contextualize Pan-African Solidarity Education Network that we have conceptualized 2 years ago. I, as an individual, after more than 35 years working or doing assignments in the area of education and training in different countries, including Barbados, Botswana, Canada, Kenya, Swaziland, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, I come to believe that quality education is very important for our advancement. Actually, I have developed the arrogance to argue vociferously that quality education is the panacea to some of our endemic problems. These problems include students' disengagement from the learning process and the high dropout rate, the deficit in marketable skills among this population group, the chronic high unemployment and unemployment among African youth worldwide, and their social disconnectedness. This phenomenon should give us cause for concern among all stakeholders, especially Pan-African leaders globally on that premise. I am putting forward the argument for Pan-African education framework agendas to address the problems. As a point of departure, and to put emphasis, I would like to quote a distinguished colleague, an African-American educator and scholar, Asa Hilliard. Quote, "No matter where we are, on the continent or on the diaspora, our condition is the same. We are at the bottom and we are descending. We Africans, however, have not viewed our problem holistically. First, we must see ourselves as Africans, people. Secondly, we must understand not only the role that white supremacy has played in our subjugation, but also the role that we ourselves have played. For nearly 200 years, Pan-African scholars, educators, thinkers, activists, and leaders across the geographical divide set an agenda to liberate the African mind from its many entrapments of inferiority and subservience. These people include such as Martin Delane, William Edward Du Bois, Malifia Santi, Charles G. Woodson, and Booker T. Washington from the United States. Marcus Garvey, Edward Blyden, Sylvester Williams, and Walter Rodney from the Caribbean. Kwame Nkrumah, Patrick Lumumba, Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, Robert Sabuku, and Steve Biko from Africa. And last but not least, we have George Day, Charles James, and Karen Brackett from Canada. These Africans from across the geographic divide have come to realize that the mind is the prerequisite to the liberation and advancement of Africa and Africans worldwide. Empirical evidence show us that there is a persistent struggle between the contending entities for the African mind. It is evident that controlling the African mind is important because it will determine the future of Africa and Africans globally for generations to come. Controlling the African mind will determine whether the domination, exploitation, and marginalization of Africa and African people will continue indefinitely, or if the state of affairs will end in the near future. During the earlier part of the 20th century, Africa was a pejorative in the mind of many black or African people scattered across the Americas and other parts of the globe because of the negative depiction of Africa in the popular media, literature, and education. The struggle for the African mind is predicated on conflicting diametrical extremes. For example, dominance versus subservience, power versus powerlessness, superiority versus inferiority, the exploited versus the exploitee or the exploited. When the mind is, I think it was Charles G. Woodson said, when the mind is controlled, it is easily maneuverable. Behavior becomes predictable, and those behaviors may be antithetic to Africa and Africans' interests. The power and influence of Pan-Africanism in the 21st century is crucial because it will determine Africa and African future standing among the world's powerful nations in the pursuit of strengthening Pan-Africanism. It is necessary to put in place an information and education system that will heighten and enhance our African connectedness and free our minds from mental slavery. In my opinion, the underlying principles of the establishment, development, and advancement of Pan-African Solidarity Education Network is to work towards the African world as a single unit of entity. In the development and moving forward, I believe that the emphasis should be placed on the cultural, historical, economic, political entities so that there are linkage among the various aspects of the African world while not dismissing variations and differences. I also believe that there should be identification and emphasis upon the fundamental values of African civilization. I believe that the binding element in the development and moving forward can be implemented through the formal and informal education system. For example, curriculum evaluation, curriculum modification, curriculum development, and implementation is an important instrument that can be used to accomplish the desired goals. From my point of view, I look at two primary goals of a Pan-African education framework. For example, one, to move the African agenda forward in a manner that it enables and empowers Africans globally and strengthens the African position in the world. The second major goal is to arrange and link educators, scholars, and education initiatives that are organized and functioning to meet the needs of the Africans worldwide, especially students and youth. I look at a number of objectives to accomplish our goal. One, promote and develop an African-centered education framework that meets the needs of African students at all levels of the learning continuum, including at the elementary level, the secondary level, and the tertiary level, for adoption by educational system on the continent and in the diaspora. Two, to set up a network to promote and develop programs and schools in the continent and in the diaspora to deliver standardized African-centered international curriculum aimed at preparing the future leaders of Africa, the diaspora, and in the world in general. Initiate feasible action to support multiple purposes, including but not limited to educational research, curriculum assessment, development, teachers training, the publishing of appropriate textbook and educational material. Consult, cooperate, and collaborate with local, national, and international government and in the government educational organizations and other institutions with the aim of promoting African-centered education or an Afrocentric educational agenda. Also to advocate a comprehensive Pan-African curriculum. We should also make links with key stakeholders, including teachers, parents, principals, education policymakers, etc., to encourage development in this area. To promote awareness of absolute urgency and the necessity of a Pan-African curriculum. Advocate the necessary content of a Pan-African curriculum. Organize workshops, lectures, discussions, circles, study circles, and other initiatives to promote the Pan-African curriculum. Facilitate the development and implementation of a Pan-African curriculum. I'll skip some and I'll go to the conclusion. In the conclusion, I'll try to present an overall view of how we as African educators, scholars, and leaders can contribute to moving Africa forward through the century and beyond. We must defeat those entities that are now in pursuit, in the scramble for Africa, and the scramble to control the minds of African people. If we allow them to control the minds of African people, they'll control Africa for decades and perhaps centuries to come. We must not allow that as educators and leaders. I would like to say, forward ever, backward never. One other point I would like to make that in coming up with these ideas, I contacted educators in England, educators across Canada, Canadian Alliance of Black Educators, those people. And I think there's one gentleman in here who I solicited ideas from. Mr. Kamani is sitting in the back with a smile on his face. Let me give him credit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pindile and Oscar. You've made my job very easy. My job really is to talk about the technicalities of where we started, where we're looking to go, why we're struggling to get there, and why every one of you in this room is going to have to be an important stakeholder in terms of how we take PASEN forward. PASEN was one of the two concrete initiatives that came out of the first Scramble for Africa conference. The Education Network, and there was a kind of an embryonic IKS, Indigenous Knowledge Systems Network. The IKS network died by the wayside because it just didn't, people were not able to keep it going. Those of us in the education side, we basically, we're tough, we've got elephant hide. And it's really down to the determination of Pindile, Oscar, myself, David, and Nomusa that we have been able to keep PASEN going. One of the bad habits we have as Africans, and this was exemplified by a recent article in the Economics magazine, in preparing for the World Economic Forum held recently here in Cape Town. And they said the problems with Africa is too much talking and too little action. There's the Economic magazine. We talk too much and we do too little. This is the third conference in a row. We need to look at practical outcomes from these conferences. I do not want to come here again next year and we are still problematizing our issues. We need to be talking about action. At the PASEN plenary last year, we had the endorsement of the initiative, We had a commitment from the South African Government Department for International Relations to fund an initiative